In early spring of 2020, life was about to change dramatically for May Won, a soft-spoken teacher living in the quiet suburbs of Vancouver. At 32, she and her husband David had been trying for their second child, hoping to give their 4-year-old daughter a sibling. What they didn't know was that fate had much bigger plans for their family. One morning, after weeks of feeling unusually tired and experiencing more severe morning sickness than her first pregnancy, May decided to visit her local clinic. The nurse who took her blood pressure noticed it was slightly elevated and recommended an immediate ultrasound just to be safe. As the cold gel spread across May's growing belly, the ultrasound technician's expression shifted from routine concentration to visible confusion. She called in another technician and then the doctor. The room grew tense with each new person who entered, their whispered conversations making May increasingly nervous. "I need to check something," the doctor said, adjusting the equipment. "Have you been feeling any unusual discomfort?" The concern in her voice made May's heart race. David, who had been holding her hand throughout the procedure, squeezed it tighter. The ultrasound screen showed something the medical team had rarely encountered. There were multiple heartbeats, so many that they had trouble counting them accurately. But what caught their attention even more was an unusual shadow that didn't quite match the pattern of the other forms on the screen. The doctor scheduled an immediate appointment with a high-risk pregnancy specialist. As May and David drove home, their minds raced with possibilities. They had heard of twins, even triplets, but the doctor's reaction suggested something far more complex. The next few days were a blur of medical appointments. Each specialist brought new equipment, new tests, and new concerns. The high-risk pregnancy unit became like a second home to May, who had to take leave from her teaching job earlier than planned. Her students sent her handmade cards, not knowing the full extent of what their teacher was going through. At home, May's mother moved in to help with their daughter and household chores. The family converted their home office into a temporary bedroom, filling it with medical monitoring equipment. David worked from home whenever possible, wanting to be near if anything happened. The local medical community buzzed with interest in May's case. Her ultrasound images were shared with specialists across the country, and a team of doctors began preparing for what they knew would be a challenging delivery. They estimated she was carrying multiple babies, but the exact number remained unclear due to the unusual positioning and that mysterious shadow that appeared in every scan. May's body changed rapidly, much more dramatically than in her first pregnancy. She couldn't sleep comfortably, couldn't eat without feeling ill, and needed help with even the simplest tasks. Their daughter, too young to fully understand, would pat her mother's growing belly and tell stories to her future siblings. The family's quiet life transformed into a carefully monitored medical journey. Their living room filled with medical journals, pregnancy books, and notes from various specialists. David spent late nights researching multiple births, trying to prepare for every possibility. Local news caught wind of the unusual pregnancy, but the family chose to keep details private, wanting to focus on May's health and the challenges ahead. Their neighbors brought meals, offered help with childcare, and provided the quiet support the family desperately needed. As May approached her third trimester, the doctor's concerns grew. The mysterious shadow in her ultrasounds seemed to be growing differently than the baby's, and her blood pressure started climbing dangerously high. The medical team began preparing for the possibility of an early delivery. Throughout it all, May maintained her gentle determination. She talked to her unborn children every night, singing traditional Chinese lullabies her grandmother had taught her. She kept a diary, documenting every flutter and kick, knowing this experience was something she would want to remember and share with her children someday. The story of May's extraordinary pregnancy spread through the medical community, drawing attention from specialists worldwide. But for the Won family, each day was simply about keeping May comfortable and healthy, preparing for the biggest change their family would ever face, and hoping for the best possible outcome for their miracle pregnancy. Little did they know that the most surprising part of their journey was still to come, when doctors would discover that not everything growing inside May was what it appeared to be. The mystery of the shadow would soon reveal itself, adding an unprecedented twist to an already remarkable story. The local Chinese community rallied around the family, bringing traditional soups believed to strengthen pregnant women and offering prayers at the nearby temple. This blend of modern medicine and cultural traditions brought comfort to May during the most challenging days of her pregnancy. As the first part of their story drew to a close, the Wong family found themselves at the center of what would become one of the most unusual medical cases in Vancouver's history. But for now, they focused on each day as it came, preparing their hearts and home for the life-changing events that lay ahead. As Mei's pregnancy progressed into its most challenging phase, her daily life became a delicate balance of hope and concern. Every morning began with a careful routine of monitoring her vital signs and recording any unusual symptoms. The medical equipment in her bedroom beeped steadily, a constant reminder of the precious lives growing inside her. Her body was changing in ways that even experienced doctors found remarkable. By the 5th month, she could barely walk without assistance. The weight of her pregnancy made even simple tasks like getting dressed or reaching for a glass of water feel like mountain climbing. David installed handrails throughout their house, transforming their home into something that looked more like a care facility. The local news started camping outside their house, hoping to catch a glimpse of what they called the miracle pregnancy. David had to install privacy screens on their windows, and Mei's mother would chase away persistent reporters with her fierce protectiveness. Their daughter found it all quite amusing, telling her kindergarten friends that her house had become famous. During one particularly difficult night, Mei woke up feeling intense pressure in her abdomen. The monitor's alarms went off, sending the household into panic mode. Within minutes, their living room filled with paramedics, but fortunately, it turned out to be a false alarm. This incident made the medical team realize they needed a better plan. The hospital prepared a special suite just for Mei, equipped with state-of-the-art monitoring systems. They wanted her close by in case anything happened. The room looked more like a comfortable apartment than a hospital space, with warm colors and family photos on the walls. The nurses even set up a small play area for her daughter's visits. Mei's doctors noticed something peculiar during their daily checkups. While most of the babies seemed to be developing normally, there was one area that grew differently. It didn't follow the typical pattern of fetal development, yet it continued to expand. This mysterious mass became the subject of many late-night medical consultations. The strain on Mei's body intensified. Her blood pressure would spike unexpectedly, and her oxygen levels would sometimes drop without warning. The medical team started taking shifts, ensuring someone was always watching her vitals. They brought in specialists from across the country, each one studying her case with growing fascination. David took indefinite leave from his job as a software engineer, setting up a small workspace in the corner of Mei's hospital room. He would work on his laptop while keeping one eye on the monitors, learning to read the numbers and graphs as well as any nurse. Their daughter would visit after school, filling the room with stories about her day and drawings for her future siblings. The local Chinese community continued their support, bringing traditional remedies and comfort food to the hospital. Mei's room often smelled of ginger tea and healing soups, much to the curiosity of the hospital staff. Some of the nurses even started learning basic Mandarin phrases to better communicate with Mei's visiting relatives. As weeks passed, the doctor's concerns grew deeper. The mysterious mass seemed to be competing with the babies for space and nutrients. They needed to make a difficult decision: continue the pregnancy and risk complications, or prepare for an early delivery. The team of specialists spent hours discussing the best approach, weighing every possible outcome. Mei's mother moved into the hospital room too, sleeping on a cot beside her daughter. She would massage Mei's swollen feet and tell stories about her own pregnancies, trying to keep her daughter's spirits up. The older woman's quiet strength became a cornerstone of support for the entire family. The hospital staff began preparing for every possible scenario. They conducted drills, practiced emergency procedures, and set up specialized equipment. The neonatal intensive care unit was expanded, and additional staff was brought in. Everyone knew this would be a delivery unlike anything they had handled before. Through it all, Mei maintained remarkable composure. She kept a diary, writing letters to each of her unborn children. When the pain and discomfort became overwhelming, she would read these letters aloud, reminding herself of the miracle growing inside her. Her quiet determination inspired everyone around her. The pressure on her body became more evident with each passing day. Simple actions like breathing required conscious effort. The medical team monitored every slight change, ready to act at a moment's notice. They knew they were walking a tightrope between waiting for the babies to develop further and ensuring May's safety. As they approached the critical point in her pregnancy, the atmosphere in the hospital grew tenser. Equipment was double-checked, emergency protocols were reviewed, and additional specialists were put on standby. Everyone could sense that the moment of truth was approaching, though none could predict exactly what they would discover when it arrived. The story of May's extraordinary pregnancy had spread beyond Vancouver, drawing attention from medical researchers and news outlets worldwide. But within the walls of her hospital room, it remained a deeply personal journey of a family facing the unknown with courage, love, and unwavering hope. As the second phase of their story drew to a close, they stood on the brink of a medical event that would soon make history in ways none of them could have imagined. Through it all, May maintained remarkable composure. She kept a diary, writing letters to each of her unborn children. When the pain and discomfort became overwhelming, she would read these letters aloud, reminding herself of the miracle growing inside her. Her quiet determination inspired everyone around her. The pressure on her body became more evident with each passing day. Simple actions like breathing required conscious effort. The medical team monitored every slight change, ready to act at a moment's notice. They knew they were walking a tightrope between waiting for the babies to develop further and ensuring May's safety. As they approached the critical point in her pregnancy, the atmosphere in the hospital grew tenser. Equipment was double-checked, emergency protocols were reviewed, and additional specialists were put on standby. Everyone could sense that the moment of truth was approaching, though none could predict exactly what they would discover when it arrived. The story of May's extraordinary pregnancy had spread beyond Vancouver, drawing attention from medical researchers and news outlets worldwide. But within the walls of her hospital room, it remained a deeply personal journey of a family facing the unknown with courage, love, and unwavering hope. As the second phase of their story drew to a close, they stood on the brink of a medical event that would soon make history in ways none of them could have imagined. The morning started like any other in May's hospital room, with nurses checking vitals and adjusting monitors. But at 3:17 p.m., everything changed. May felt a sharp pain unlike anything she experienced before, and the monitors began sounding urgent alarms. Her blood pressure skyrocketed, and the baby's heart rates started showing concerning patterns. The calm hospital corridor suddenly burst into action. Doctors rushed in, their faces masked but their eyes showing clear concern. David, who had been working in his usual corner, dropped everything and ran to May's side. Her mother quickly called their relatives while trying to keep her voice steady. "We need to take her now," the lead doctor announced, her tone leaving no room for discussion. The medical team had drilled for this moment, but the reality was far more intense than any practice run. They began moving with practiced precision, disconnecting monitors and preparing for immediate transport to the operating room. May squeezed David's hand as they wheeled her bed through the corridor. Despite the pain, she remained surprisingly calm, focusing on her breathing just as she'd practiced. The fluorescent lights passed overhead in a blur as they rushed toward the operating room that had been specially prepared for this moment. The operating room looked like something from a science fiction movie. Extra equipment had been brought in from 3 different hospitals. 2 complete surgical teams stood ready, along with specialists who had flown in from across the country. The room buzzed with focused energy as everyone took their positions. As they prepared May for the emergency C-section, a nurse held her hand and spoke softly, helping her stay calm through the chaos. David, now in surgical scrubs, stood nearby, his presence a steady comfort. The anesthesiologist worked quickly but carefully, ensuring May wouldn't feel pain while keeping her conscious enough to respond if needed. The lead surgeon's voice cut through the tension, beginning primary incision. The room fell into focused silence, broken only by the beeping of monitors and the surgeon's clear, calm instructions. Every person present knew they were part of something unprecedented in medical history. The first few minutes of surgery went according to plan, but then the surgeon paused. "There's something unusual here," she announced. The team leaned in closer, and several quick consultations followed. The mystery that had puzzled them throughout May's pregnancy was about to reveal itself. Blood pressure monitors started beeping more urgently. Time became critical. The surgical team worked with increased speed while maintaining their precision. Every movement was calculated, every decision crucial. They knew they had to work fast to ensure everyone's safety. Outside the operating room, May's mother paced the waiting area, surrounded by family members who had rushed to the hospital. Their daughter was with her favorite nurse in the children's play area, drawing pictures for her new siblings, blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding several floors above. Back in the operating room, the surgeons encountered something they'd never seen before. The mysterious mass they'd observed in ultrasounds was far more complex than anyone had anticipated. It was intertwined with the babies in a way that required extreme surgical skill to address. The room's temperature seemed to drop as the team worked through this unexpected challenge. Extra lights were brought in, more specialists were called to observe, and the procedure became increasingly complex. Yet through it all, May's vital signs remained stable, as if her body understood the importance of staying strong. The minutes stretched into hours. Nurses rotated in and out, bringing fresh supplies and taking away samples for immediate analysis. The surgical team worked tirelessly, their focus unwavering despite the growing fatigue. Every few minutes, someone would announce the baby's vital signs, each positive report bringing silent sighs of relief. David watched in awe as the medical team worked, his hand never leaving May's. Though partially hidden behind surgical masks, the determination in the doctor's eyes was clear. They were making history, but more importantly, they were fighting for a family's future. As the critical moment approached, the tension in the room peaked. The lead surgeon's voice remained steady, but her commands came faster. The team moved with increased urgency, knowing the next few minutes would be crucial. Equipment peeped more frequently, and more staff were called in to assist. The hospital corridors outside fell quiet, as if the whole building was holding its breath. Security guards kept curious onlookers away, while hospital administrators huddled nearby, ready to handle any situation that might arise. News vans gathered outside, their crews waiting for any update on what they knew would be an extraordinary story. Inside the operating room, the surgical team prepared for the most delicate part of the procedure. They knew that what they were about to discover would not only change the Wong family's life forever, but would also become a significant case study in medical history. The next few moments would reveal whether all their careful planning and preparation had been enough to handle this unprecedented situation. The operating room erupted into carefully controlled chaos as the delivery began. "First baby," the lead surgeon announced, her voice steady but urgent. A tiny cry pierced the air, and the first newborn was quickly passed to the waiting neonatal team. The sound of that first cry seemed to energize everyone in the room. "Second baby," came the call moments later, followed by another cry. The process continued, each announcement bringing new life into the world. The neonatal teams worked with incredible efficiency, each group dedicated to caring for a single infant. The room had been carefully arranged to accommodate this extraordinary situation, with specialized equipment for each baby. David watched in amazement as child after child was delivered. His eyes darted between May's face and the growing number of medical teams working with the newborns. Though he tried to prepare himself for this moment, the reality was overwhelming. Tears streamed down his face behind his surgical mask. Fourth, fifth, sixth. The count continued, each baby adding to the miracle unfolding in the operating room. The medical staff moved like a well-choreographed dance, every person knowing exactly where to be and what to do. Despite the complexity of the situation, their years of training showed in their smooth, confident movements. May lay conscious but sedated, aware of each cry that filled the room. She squeezed David's hand with each announcement, her own tears mixing with sweat on her face. Despite her exhaustion, she tried to turn her head to catch glimpses of her children as they were whisked to their designated care stations. As the 7th and 8th babies were delivered, the surgical team's movements became more focused. They knew they were approaching the area that had shown unusual readings throughout the pregnancy. The lead surgeon's expression intensified behind her mask as she worked with increased precision. "There's something different here," she announced, her voice low but clear. The room's atmosphere shifted as they approached the mysterious mass they'd observed in all those ultrasounds. The surgical team leaned in closer, their movements becoming even more careful and deliberate. The 9th baby emerged, but the doctors didn't pause to celebrate. They were focused on the unusual formation they discovered. Additional lights were brought in, and more specialists stepped forward to observe. The room grew quieter, the only sounds being the vital sign monitors and the distant cries of the newborns. What they found next would become a significant part of medical history. Among the babies was a mass that had developed alongside them, masquerading as another infant on ultrasounds, but clearly something else entirely. The surgical team worked with extreme care to separate it from the surrounding tissue. Throughout this critical phase, the anesthesiologist kept close watch on Mei's vital signs, adjusting medications as needed. The neonatal teams continued their work with the 9 newborns, each baby receiving intensive care and monitoring. The room was full but organized, with every medical professional focused on their specific task. Outside the operating room, word began to spread through the hospital about the extraordinary delivery taking place. Staff members who weren't involved found reasons to pass by the hors d'oeuvres, curious about the historic event unfolding inside. The hospital administrators had already begun preparing for the media attention they knew would follow. Back in the operating room, the surgical team carefully documented everything they found. Photographs were taken for medical records, and samples were prepared for laboratory analysis. Every detail would be important for understanding this rare case and helping future medical professionals. The lead surgeon continued to work methodically, ensuring nothing was overlooked. Her experience with complex surgeries had prepared her for challenging situations, but this was unlike anything she'd encountered in her decades of practice. Her steady hands and calm demeanor helped keep the entire team focused. As they began to close the surgical site, the full impact of what they'd accomplished started to sink in. 9 healthy babies had been delivered, and a medical mystery had been uncovered. All nurses began their count of surgical instruments, while others prepared the detailed documentation that would be required for such an unusual case. David finally allowed himself to look around the room at all his newborn children, each one being cared for by dedicated medical professionals. The sight was overwhelming, 9 tiny lives, each perfect and miraculous in their own way. He looked back at Mei, who managed a tired smile despite her exhaustion. The operating room gradually transformed from a place of intense surgical focus to one of post-operative care. The babies were stabilized and prepared for transfer to the neonatal intensive care unit. Each one had their own medical team, their own set of monitors, their own story of survival against incredible odds. As part 4 of this extraordinary journey came to a close, the medical team knew they had just participated in something remarkable. They had not only delivered 9 healthy babies, but had also discovered something that would contribute significantly to medical knowledge. Yet for the exhausted parents, the most important fact was simpler. Their family had just grown in ways they never could have imagined. The hours following the surgery were filled with a whirlwind of activity and discovery. As Mei was moved to recovery, teams of doctors gathered in the conference room to discuss what they had found during the delivery. The mysterious mass that had puzzled them throughout the pregnancy was finally revealed to be a rare type of benign tumor called a teratoma. The hospital's pathology lab became the center of attention as specialists examined the unusual growth. Under powerful microscopes, they discovered something fascinating. The tumor contained various types of tissue, including hair and even tiny tooth-like structures. This explained why it had appeared so similar to a developing baby on ultrasounds. Mei's mother took charge of updating the extended family, her phone constantly buzzing with messages from relatives around the world. She managed to keep curious reporters at bay while ensuring that important family members got regular updates about both Mei and the baby's conditions. The hospital's small research library became a hub of activity as medical students and residents pored over literature about similar cases. They discovered that while multiple births with teratomas had been documented before, none had involved so many babies or such a large tumor. The one case was already being prepared for submission to medical journals. In her recovery room, Mei finally got to see photos of all her children. She studied each tiny face on David's phone screen, tears rolling down her cheeks as she counted them again and again. The nurses brought her charts showing each baby's progress, and she memorized every detail, their weights, their feeding schedules, their tiny victories. The pathology team worked overtime analyzing the tumor, fascinated by its complexity. They discovered that it had developed its own blood supply system, explaining why it had grown so large without impacting the baby's development. Their findings would help doctors better understand and treat similar cases in the future. Back in the NICU, the babies were proving to be fighters. Despite being born early, they were all breathing well and showing good signs of development. The nurses had started calling them by numbers, but each one was already showing distinct personalities. Baby 3 was particularly vocal, while Baby 7 rarely cried at all. The hospital administration scrambled to handle media interest while protecting the family's privacy. They issued a brief statement confirming the successful delivery of nonuplets and the removal of a rare tumor, but kept other details private at the family's request. Still, reporters camped outside the hospital, hoping for more information. David and May's daughter finally got to meet her new siblings, though only through the NICU window at first. She stood on a special step stool, pressing her nose against the glass as her father pointed out each baby. She immediately appointed herself their official protector, telling everyone who would listen about her 9 new brothers and sisters. The medical team began compiling their notes for what would become a groundbreaking case study. They documented everything from the unusual ultrasound readings early in the pregnancy to the final pathology reports on the tumor. Photographs, measurements, and detailed observations were carefully recorded for future reference. Inside the NICU, life fell into a careful routine. Every 3 hours, the babies were fed, changed, and checked by their dedicated nurses. The room hummed with the sound of monitors and gentle voices as staff members spoke softly to their tiny charges. Charts were meticulously updated, tracking every gram gained and every milestone reached. As the 5th day after surgery drew to a close, the medical team finally had a complete picture of what had made this case so extraordinary. The tumor had developed from the same cellular beginnings as the babies, but had taken a different path, creating a medical phenomenon that would be studied for generations to come. Yet amidst all the medical excitement and scientific discovery, the heart of the story remained simple and human, a family blessed with 9 tiny miracles, each one perfect in their own way. The tumor, now safely removed and being studied in the lab, had become just another chapter in their remarkable journey. Meanwhile, in the neonatal intensive care unit, 9 tiny babies were receiving round-the-clock care. Each one had their own team of nurses and doctors, their own monitoring equipment, and their own carefully controlled environment. The NICU had never been so full of life, with staff members moving efficiently between the incubators. David split his time between visiting May in recovery and watching over their newborns. He couldn't stop smiling despite his exhaustion, taking photos of each baby to show his wife. The nurses helped him learn how to tell them apart, pointing out tiny differences in their features and personalities that were already becoming apparent. The news spread quickly through the medical community. Doctors from other hospitals requested information about the case, particularly interested in how the tumor had developed alongside the babies without causing harm. The lead surgeon spent hours documenting every detail of the procedure, knowing this case would be studied for years to come. The recovery period brought new challenges and joys for the Wong family. 2 weeks after the historic delivery, May was finally strong enough to visit the NICU in a wheelchair. The moment she first held one of her babies, the smallest one, weighing just over 3 pounds, tears flowed freely down her face. The nurses worked out a careful schedule so she could hold each baby every day, even if just for a few minutes. The NICU staff had developed a remarkable system to care for all 9 babies. Color-coded charts hung above each incubator, and every baby wore a tiny bracelet with their own special symbol. Little stars, moons, and hearts helped everyone tell them apart. The nurses kept detailed logs of every feeding, diaper change, and milestone. David took paternity leave from his job, spending long hours in the NICU learning how to care for premature babies. He mastered the art of changing tiny diapers through the incubator ports and learned how to read the various monitors that beeped constantly. The nurses praised his dedication, noting how quickly he learned each baby's unique personality. Their older daughter became a regular fixture in the NICU waiting area, where she set up a small art studio. She drew pictures for each of her siblings, which the nurses taped to their incubators. She gave each baby a nickname based on their personalities: Sleepy, Wiggler, Squeaky, names that even the medical staff began using unofficially. Mi's recovery progressed well, though slowly. Physical therapists worked with her daily, helping her regain strength. The unusual nature of her pregnancy had put extraordinary strain on her body, but her determination to be there for her children drove her forward. She started keeping a journal, writing down every tiny detail about each baby's progress. The tumor that had been removed became the subject of intense study. Research teams from several universities requested samples for analysis. Its unique development alongside the baby's provided valuable insights into fetal growth and development. The case was already being included in medical textbooks as an extraordinary example of multiple births with complications. As the babies grew stronger, the NICU staff began teaching the parents essential care techniques. They learned about kangaroo care, holding the babies skin to skin to promote bonding and development. Each parent wore a special front-opening shirt, making it easier to tuck the tiny babies against their chest. The local Chinese community continued their support, organizing meal deliveries for the extended family and helping with household chores. Mi's mother coordinated everything from the family's apartment, ensuring her daughter could focus entirely on recovery and the babies. Traditional Chinese medicine practitioners offered gentle postpartum treatments to help Mi heal. Each baby reached milestones at their own pace. The largest one was first to breathe without support, while the smallest took a bit longer but showed remarkable determination. The NICU staff celebrated every achievement, no matter how small, the first time each baby opened their eyes, their first successful feeding, their first tiny grip on a finger. David and Mi's apartment underwent a complete transformation. Friends and family helped convert their living room into a nursery, with 9 cribs arranged in a semicircle. They installed a specialized air filtration system and soundproofed the windows. Everything was prepared for the day the babies would finally come home. The hospital's lactation specialists worked closely with Mi, helping her manage the challenging task of providing milk for 9 babies. They set up a careful pumping schedule and organized a milk bank to ensure every baby got the nutrition they needed. The staff marveled at Mi's dedication, noting how she never complained despite the exhausting routine. As weeks passed, the babies began showing more distinct personalities. One was notably calm, barely crying even during diaper changes. Another would only settle when classical music played. The nurses kept detailed notes about these preferences, helping the parents understand each child's unique traits. The hospital arranged for a professional photographer to document the family's journey. The resulting images were breathtaking, tiny hands reaching out from incubators, David and Mi's tired but joyful faces, their daughter reading stories to her siblings through the NICU window. These photos would later become part of a touching exhibition about the power of medical science and human resilience. After 6 weeks, the first baby was declared ready to go home. It was both exciting and terrifying for the parents. They had prepared thoroughly, but the responsibility felt enormous. The NICU staff assured them they were ready, having watched them master the necessary care techniques over the past weeks. 6 months after the historic delivery, the Wong family had settled into their new normal. Their home, once quiet and orderly, now buzzed with the sounds of 9 babies and their older sister. The living room looked like a tiny village, with cribs arranged in a circle and a carefully organized system of supplies within easy reach. The babies had all come home at different times, each one reaching the required milestones at their own pace. The last baby, the smallest of the group, finally joined the family after 3 months in the NICU. That day, the nurses who had cared for them threw a small celebration, many of them crying as they said goodbye to their tiny patients. Life ran like a carefully choreographed dance. David and Mi had worked out an impressive schedule with help from both their mothers. Feeding times were staggered throughout the day and night, with each baby color-coded to keep track of their routines. Their older daughter proudly helped with simple tasks, like picking out clothes and sorting tiny socks. The local community continued to rally around them. Neighbors took turns bringing meals, and volunteers from their church helped with laundry and household chores. A retired nurse who lived nearby came by regularly to give the parents short breaks, insisting they needed to rest to keep up their strength. Each baby had developed their own distinct personality. The firstborn was naturally nurturing, often reaching out to hold hands with siblings in nearby cribs. The middle child was the most active, constantly kicking and wiggling. The youngest remained the quietest, wearing a peaceful expression that reminded everyone of May. Medical researchers continue to study the case, particularly interested in how the tumor had developed alongside the healthy babies. The findings were published in several prestigious medical journals, helping doctors better understand similar conditions. May and David agreed to share their story, hoping it might help other families facing unusual pregnancies. Their older daughter had adapted beautifully to her role as big sister. She made up songs about each baby and insisted on helping with their daily care. Her kindergarten teacher noticed she'd become more nurturing with her classmates, often helping younger children tie their shoes or zip their coats. The family's apartment had been transformed with the help of creative solutions. Special shelving units kept supplies organized, and a small computer system helped track feeding schedules and medication times. They'd installed a quiet ventilation system to keep the air fresh and soft lighting that could be adjusted for different times of day. May had recovered fully from the surgery, though she carried a long scar that she called her badge of honor. She started a blog sharing their daily experiences, which quickly gained followers worldwide. Her honest posts about the challenges and joys of raising multiple babies resonated with parents everywhere. David worked from home most days, setting up his office in a corner of their bedroom. His company had been incredibly supportive, allowing him flexible hours to help with the babies. He often took video calls with a baby or two sleeping peacefully in a carrier on his chest, something his colleagues found endearing. The baby's first checkup as a complete group was a major event at the pediatrician's office. All 9 showed normal development, though each had their own growth pattern. The doctor, who had been skeptical about their chances during pregnancy, admitted she'd never been happier to be proved wrong. Their story had inspired changes at the local hospital. The NICU expanded its facilities to better handle multiple births, and new protocols were developed based on lessons learned from the one case. The tumor was now preserved in the hospital's medical museum, helping train new doctors about rare pregnancy complications. As the babies approached their half-year milestone, the family celebrated with a small gathering. Each baby wore a tiny traditional Chinese outfit, a gift from their grandmother. Photos from that day showed 9 bright-eyed, healthy infants surrounded by their loving family, a far cry from the tiny, fragile beings in the NICU just months before. Looking back, the medical team's discovery of the tumor seemed almost secondary to the miracle of 9 healthy babies, yet that unusual finding had advanced medical knowledge and would potentially help other families in the future. The Wong family had contributed to both medical science and a greater understanding of human resilience. The final page in May's pregnancy journal read simply, "Today marks 6 months since our lives changed forever. Each cry, each smile, each tiny milestone reminds us that miracles come in many forms. Our family's story is proof that sometimes the unexpected turns out to be the most beautiful gift of all." This remarkable journey, from a puzzling pregnancy to a family of 12, had become more than just a medical case study. It was a testament to the strength of family, the power of community support, and the incredible capabilities of modern medicine. Most importantly, it was the story of love multiplied 9 times over, bringing joy not just to one family, but to everyone who witnessed their extraordinary journey.